Well, thanks for coming. Today we're going to go over some Cayan Genius changes or updates that have happened in version 8. Again, my name is Mike Tabor, and this is Keystroke Live. As always, we do this Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and the same time, same place. And then usually on the first of the month, we have Michael Gebb present kind of what's new with the Keystroke software. I put together kind of a bullet point of things that have been updating throughout the last few months. I'll kind of go over the bullet point list here, and then we'll kind of talk about them in Keystroke and so forth, and some new changes. First off, the current app version on the Cayan Genius should be 5.0.0.7. You can now check that in the Keystroke program just by using the test button. And I'll bounce over there shortly and show you that. There's also a way to actually enter in the 3 zeros and a password, and that allows you to actually see the device on the unit itself, and you can also use the test button on the device to go out and make sure you have an internet connection. In version 8, we're actually shipping 8.00 build 29 if we release that this week. Some of the changes made in previous builds include the reducing of the size of the log files. Currently, version 8 of Keystroke will write kind of the communications back and forth from the device to files in the data folder. They are MW register number.log files. And if you do many transactions, there is a lot of communication between Keystroke, the Genius, from Genius to Cayan, and back and forth and so forth. And so the size of those files in some cases could get very large. We've seen like 16 megabytes, 30 megabytes and so forth, and we've kind of realized that if they get too big in size over a network, it kind of slows things down. So we actually rename the file to a temp file and then reinitialize it with a smaller subset around 512 bytes of information and start fresh, kind of, so to say. This has been in Keystroke for a long time, but the sales entry commands, you can actually use these in Sales Manager to actually create toolbar buttons for the 3 different options on the Cayan Genius. I just thought I'd bring it up because we do get a lot of calls. Some people like to use their toolbars to select the different options. If we remember, the Cayan Genius has the option of selected by customer, the option for manual entry, and the option for split tendered. So if you want to split between 2 credit cards. We also added in version 8 recently support for the skip tendered field. That was kind of in the past always on. It would always skip the tendered field, so it wouldn't give some people an option. If they had set up a toolbar to say selected by customer, it would send the full amount to the device without ever being able to let the clerk intervene. And in the past, they'd have to tell the customer to hit the cancel button and go back a step and then split the tender. If they didn't know these special commands or know to pick it off the list. In doing so, turning this feature on, some people that have had it off are now pausing on this screen where they have to hit enter to select the full amount. So we're getting a few support calls on that. Just know that the skip tendered field, if you are in a business that will always go to letting the customer make the decision, you want that skip tendered field turned on. Because all of a sudden, if they went from one build to another, all of a sudden it's going to be turned on. Or actually it'll be working if it was turned on, let's put it that way. Some other good information here is we do have a support person for EMV support at Cayan, and they've given this as 855 number, that's 855-273-4187, and it goes to one of their support technicians at Cayan, and that person has been very good at returning calls very quickly if you leave a message. Seems to be a very good expert and can figure out problems if you don't have EMV working correctly, and that's good to know. A lot of times we're getting calls for people that are having problems with the Genius IP address sticking, so to say. That is actually stored in the Windows registry per machine, and we find out some people may not have the rights to write to the registry. And so kind of a simple solution is to add to either the startup switch, which is it's genius IP equals and then an IP address. That'll override the setting in Keystroke. It's a good way to do some tech support if you're having problems with the IP addresses and so forth, or if you're not on site and somehow the device for whatever reason was dynamically changed to a different IP address. We can find out that IP address, put it on a command line, and let them continue on. It's a good tech tip to know. We got some feedback from both Cayan and some of our resellers that the DNS settings on the device itself can be set to the Google DNS servers, which is 8.8.8.8, and the secondary would be 8.8.4.4. We found out this to be very successful for people that are having kind of intermittent connection problems, and it's usually in the fact that your internal IP address and your external router are trying to resolve some kind of DNS situation, and they're kind of waiting to get an answer back, and so there seems to have made it a lot faster. And lastly, on this tech tip, ipconfig/flush DNS, that was recommended by Cayan at one time when they actually had a problem where they changed their back-end routers, and they uploaded some information to the device, and then it wouldn't communicate correctly. It was a 1 or 2 day period. Cayan had recommended running this. I don't really know if I've seen any difference here in this office for that application. But let me kind of go through a couple things quickly. First of all, let's just go through the current app, and I'll show you how Keystroke can show that. Let me jump over to Keystroke here. I'm going to leave go back to Configuration Manager. I believe I have this set up, and I've tested it once earlier yesterday. Let's see how it's working. So in here, first of all, just take a quick look. Again, this is more of an update of the settings and what has changed recently. We do have a tech document on how to install this. You can download it from our update installer, or you can have us email it to you. It is also installed in your Keystroke program directory. If you ever need the instructions on any of our hardware, they're in the Keystroke doc folder, and some of these, like this one, is under the third-party hardware folder. Anyhow, this is a simple setup here. I'm going to just take a quick look. I have ours set up. We have a test account that we use with this device here. And notice down here the Genius IP address. We're using an internal address here, and we've actually set ours to a static IP address, which we recommend. And there are a couple other things. I'll just show you this. Line item display. I didn't put it on my bullet points, but it's a very important part. In 5.0.07, we do support displaying of line items on the device. And we have off, which is for existing data sets, it's left at off. If you have a brand new install, it'll be turned on like this one is. And on with upload actually uploads the items to the Cayan server. There's some information on the README what that does. But at this time, I think you just want to use the on option. And as we do transactions, it'll start showing line items. If you have over 200 line items on your Keystroke screen, first of all, it can only show a small subset of that, but it'll actually just show the last few on the bottom of the screen. And if you were to arrow up to the top of a 200 line item display, you would stop seeing the ones above that. But that's very rare. So the line item display is something also new that I didn't put in the bullet points. Manual entry on web form, that's always been there before, but we actually have it turned off now for new data sets. Cayan now supports a manual entry on the device itself. There is a case now that if you actually try to do a return on a credit card with manual entry, it actually does have to use the web form. Cayan is looking into resolving that, but Keystroke is now set up to handle that by automatically pulling up the web form. If you don't remember that or the look of that, I think we had that on a previous Keystroke Live. Anyhow, this is the setting here. I'm just going to say OK to this. And I'm answering no to gratuity, to donations, and to discounts. We do have some settings that are in the README for that too. I'm going to click on the Test Pin Pad button, and it first confirms the IP address that I'm using. This is a good way to confirm if it's using your Genius IP equals on a target line or the setting inside here. I'm not using that switch. Here is the first communications with the device, and went out, talked to the device, found out its serial number. You will need to know that if you want to contact Cayan support and say, I need to update my device, I need it to be on EMV, or I need it to have some changes to it. And it also talks about the app version and the OS version. I've never really documented what the OS version relates to or the importance of it, but they may ask you for that when you contact them. At this time, it's just actually doing a test. I'm going to show you. This is kind of hard to do without unplugging something. The line item display. That's if I have enough power cord, or I don't. Anyhow, there's a line item display there. Sorry, I can't see my own window. Let me see if I can show this a little better. I'm going to pause this for a second. Try to get the glare off the screen for you. Here's how the Genius looks now with the line item display displayed. So as line items are entered on the screen, sorry about the glare, you actually see the line items, the quantities, and so forth. Quantities of fractional quantities, if you use the upload, do not work. They only kind of show the truncated number. It's asking me to finish the test. So sample transaction should be displayed. It is. I say OK. It's kind of initializing the test transaction here, and I have to get a card ready. Sorry, I think I messed it up here. I think I actually hit the power cord on it. So let me go back to showing something. Oh, there we go. Sorry. I think I pulled out my network cable out of my card. So I won't continue on with this right now and trying to show you those line item details. I didn't have enough information. I'm going to go ahead and abort the test at this time. So that kind of gives you an idea of the information you're going to get when you do the test. Let's see if it's going to help me out there. Keep in mind the app version 5007 is important. We need to kind of know that you're on that application version. There's a lot of stuff that Cayan has been fixing on their back end. Let's go back to my slide. Let's see what else we're going to talk about. The log files. I'm going to go ahead and just find them and then show you the log files. I am using the tutor data. I'll bounce over here real quick. So this folder here shows that I'm on register 1. This is the mw1.log file, and it's been writing some entries to it.
Mike, we're not seeing the screen yet.
Oh, okay. Let me go back. Actually, I was just showing you the tutor folder. Do you see the tutor folder that shows an mw1.log?
Now it just appeared.
All right, thanks. And I'm usually too hasty and rush through some things. I'm going to now open that file, and then I'll give myself some time here. Somebody's turned the font on very large. I'm going to shrink it down a bit. And this is a sample right here of what the log file looks like. As you can kind of see, we start sending different information. Request to Genius is right here. Then the answer. It's pretty much a handshaking kind of thing that is happening. This log file we use for debugging and trying to find any issues in version 8. It's on by default. The size of the file can grow rather large, and that's why the newer build has a way to kind of truncate that file to pretty much keep the last, so many lines of code in there. I'm going to scroll through this. Here was a test transaction here and some other information in the dollar amounts. And then it got back to trying to find the current status and so forth, and went back to the status screen. This is kind of just one transaction here. So keep that in mind, that many lines is pretty much what it takes to document what one transaction might look like. So you can imagine that file getting very large. And I hope everyone got just a flavor for that. You don't really, that'll be for debugging. You'd send that to us for tech support. If everything's running smoothly and you don't want to be writing this log file, or you think it's causing an issue, we can always turn it off with the command line switch. Okay, I'll jump back to some other points. The sales entry command, I'll go ahead and talk about that. I'm going to bounce around in Keystroke while that screen's up.
We're not seeing any screens yet, Mike.
All right, that's all right. Thanks. I'll wait.
There's Keystroke. Okay.
So, for instance, here we have some toolbar buttons. These are just our default ones. We could change these. For instance, let me show you what some of these are already set to, and I'll kind of go slow so we can see them. All right, you should be able to see this eventually.
Yep.
This is, do you see that Visa toolbar button there, Nick? Thank you.
Yes, yes.
So the sales entry command is what is used to pick payments. This one actually picks payment number 5. It is because it's one of the many mapped payment numbers, it'll actually go out and pick the selected by customer. But we can change these numbers in this to very special cases, -1, -2, or -3. And -1 represents selected by customer, for instance. So all we would do is change any number to -1. If you'd like to see how I would do this, I'll go ahead and just quickly do it. Some people think this is the greatest thing ever because I could actually change my button to say something like, well, if I typed it right. Not too pretty there, but you could keep it something simple. We can go, I clicked on, by the way, if you didn't see me, I clicked on the little binoculars here. It shows me the different options for toolbars. I'm going to do sales entry command. Then I'm going to select enter payment. And notice it brings up a list of payments on here. It doesn't give me the selected by customer list or anything else, but the trick here that you know is just pick any one you want. Let's say I wanted to pick ATM debit, and it puts in the number for me. And I can change that manually knowing that -1 means selected by customer. So I typed in a negative and a 1 there, and I'm just going to say OK. And now I've saved my toolbar. Didn't do a very good job of it though, did I? It's this toolbar here. Yeah, let's go back to something else here. Probably my inability to see 2 screens at once. Oh, there it is. So for instance, I have this toolbar up here now. I'll give it some time to refresh. That says select by customer. And they could click on that after doing a transaction, and that would take it right to the device. It would skip any tendered amount. It would go right to the device, asking them to put in their EMV card, swipe it, or if they're using any kind of NFC device, they could use that too. So I could go through the list. I could change my MasterCard if I wanted to. Looks like take out a graphic and put in manual, something simple like that, and that would be like a -2. And as I go through, I would just change these. Of course, I can get a little prettier than this if I wanted to, put a background color on it and so forth. So the idea here is that you might just have a few payment buttons now that you use the Genius because they're all mapped. You don't need one for Discover, American Express, gift cards, Visa, MasterCard, and so forth. You pretty much need 3 of them, selected by customer, manual credit card, and split tender, if you even do split tenders. So that's kind of that bullet point. Let me go back to my presentation, give it a little time to refresh here. Somehow, there we go. Let's just talk about I'm going to show you where the skip tender field is. We get a lot of tech support calls. You'll probably see some calls yourself. So if they update to, I think it's build 27 or later, might have been 26, we turn that on. Get back into Keystroke, get that started. Takes a while to upload the graphics. You'll probably see it shortly, but I'm going to go to Configuration Manager. So I'm in Configuration Manager. I'm looking under Tables, under Sales Payment Types, and here are my different types of payments. Keystroke will actually use this top payment type for many of its settings. I call it the very first credit card on the list. It's actually going to use this setting for most all of the transaction payment types when you use the Genius. The list shows up differently. If you're not familiar with it, you'll see it's selected by customer option. If I come in here, notice in the lower left, the fourth box from the bottom says Skip Tendered Field. New data sets, this is turned on for our credit card payment types, but it might have been turned off before for whatever reason. And then if you're using the Cayan Genius, it would have automatically just gone right to the device for the full amount. And then we made a change to have this actually work for the Genius. And now all of a sudden they're not skipping that option anymore, and now there's an extra step. They click a button or they hit enter and they have to sit there and look at the dollar amount and hit enter one more time. If that comes up, check the setting, come back in here, see that it's unchecked, put a checkbox, click the checkbox to check it, and we're set to go, and we can just say OK here. So that's kind of some information I shared about the Keystroke Cayan Genius and the interface. I'm going to come back to my slideshow, just show you again once more the tech tips, and then I'll open it up for discussion here. So the Cayan support number, give them a call if you're having any problems. Use the startup switch, Genius IP. The Google DNS, there are some instructions in our PDF document that tell you how to get in and set up a static IP and how to set up these DNS accounts. I've seen some kind of really messed up setups. I don't know where some people are getting some IP addresses from, but they're kind of very incorrect, and you try to go find out where they came from. And I don't know if Cayan set them up that way or something in the past, but that seems to be a good tech support tip. So if anyone has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer your questions. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions on the Genius or anything we went over today, just give us a call on our support line, and we're here to help out. So have a good day.